Hey everyone, welcome back to another ASM Track Tips. My name's Tomo Gorman, and today we're talking about a personal favorite of mine, the main circuit at Thunderhill Raceway Park. This is the original 3-mile circuit. It's got 15 corners up in Willows, California, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it situates itself in these really abrupt rolling hills that turns into an amazing track to drive. In general, this track has a lot of momentum. It really rewards downforce and mechanical grip. Just as fast as your car can go, this track will let you do it. So it's a ton of fun to drive, and let's jump into some of my tips. So here's our track map of Thunderhill Raceway Park. Again, the original main 3-mile circuit. This track does run in both directions, but today we're going to be talking about the counterclockwise direction with both options for turn 5. But starting back on the start-finish straightaway, the longest straightaway on the track, very long, and on your right is the pit lane with the start-finish line right about here, most of the way down the straightaway. And if you were to drive this track with no driver's meeting, you would see a white painted line that you would assume you can't cross coming down the right side of the track here. It looks like it's the pit out blend line, but you can actually cross over that. Most groups will let you do this, so you want to actually cross as soon as the pit wall goes away. You're going to cross all the way over to the right side of the track, across that blend line, and open up turn 1 as much as you possibly can. Now turn 1, it's only about 50 degrees in angle. It's very, very, very fast and uphill until the exit. So you can carry a ton of speed here. And before we jump in too much, there's an overarching trick at Thunderhill. When you do your outlap or your first couple of laps, look for the black sealer that's much darker in color than the rest of the pavement. That sealer has a lot more grip than the rest of the pavement, and you can really utilize that to your advantage by carrying speed and trusting where it's going to gain grip for the car, rather than just driving the track as if it has the same grip everywhere. And the first time that comes into play is about halfway through turn 1. For turn 1, you want a very light brake pressure, not a lot of brake pressure, and just focus on rolling speed in. And about halfway through the corner, that sealer will pop up right about where the curb starts here on your left. You're going to feel a lot of grip gain as soon as you cross onto that point. So when you turn in, the car's going to feel like it might push, it might not make the corner, but as soon as you kind of get to that sealer at the apex, you're going to gain grip, and all of a sudden you'll realize you have plenty of opportunity for speed coming out of turn 1. So once you've crossed onto that sealer and you're back on power, feeding power uphill, you're going to use all of the track out curbing on the right, basically focusing on not upsetting the car too much on the brakes and maximizing your apex speed through turn 1. Now it's a short run, continuing uphill slightly before a crest and back downhill into turn 2, which is a huge 180-degree carousel all the way around the outside here. So as we approach turn 2, there should be a couple of brake markers on your right, at least there were last time I was there. Most cars, because of how on camber, long, and with sealer on the inside turn 2 is, most cars can just cut the inside, cut the distance all the way around to about here where you start to track out. So on the way into the corner, you want to hit the brakes, and you basically cross from the right to the left side of the track down to the inside and just run the inside rim all the way around. Just rely on the mechanical grip the car has and cut the distance out. Now there are a couple of cases where the car might be better off to come in about middle and then work your way down to the inside by about the midpoint in the corner. You can play with that just a little bit, but in general, cutting the distance out of this long turn 2 is going to pay dividends. Now when you get to the exit curbing right around the inside here of the left side of the track is when you can start to track out to the outside curbing, and then you have a really short chute up into turn 3. Now turn 3 is very blind on the approach. You're actually cresting right about here before the car starts to go downhill into the corner. So you need to turn in much before that crest and start to lead the car into the corner, or else you're going to have turned in far too late. So coming off of turn 2, you can get the car back to maybe mid-track, maybe a little bit further to the left, but you don't need to get all the way out to the grass. The more important part is to cross your hands and start to turn in before you get to the crest of turn 3. Get any braking done with maybe a medium pressure on the brake pedal, and then start to roll that momentum over the crest. The car will go a little bit light, might get unsettled through the first phase of the corner, but as the track starts to level out, right about here, you also get a little bit of sealer that helps cheat the grip just a little bit more, and then the car will start to stick and you can finish the exit of turn 3. Now turn 3 and 4 connect to one another, so rather than powering off of turn 3 and tracking out, we're actually going to cling to the right side of the track, get the car all the way over to this side, and then cross our hands back aggressively for turn 4. And as long as you set up exiting turn 3 well, turn 4 is pretty much a non-event. You're just kind of crossing your hands and turning across the middle of the corner. There's nothing really tricky about it, but if you're complacent exiting turn 3, let the car track out to the left, you're really going to hang yourself for turn 4. So now we have two layouts. We'll go over them both quickly. The first one is called the Cyclone, and that's going to go up to this quick chicane, which you'll see on the video is basically driving straight up towards the sky. You crest right at the top and then fall right back down. It's a really severe elevation change, almost like the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Then we also have the bypass, which shoots past that and is much higher speed. My preference is the bypass. It's a lot more fun, but real quick for the Cyclone itself, you're basically powering off of turn 4, staying to the right side of the track, charging in, braking uphill very late. Kind of just park the car at the apex at the top, get the car pointed, and powering right back down the hill. It's really not a very complex corner, but you do need a couple of laps to get the visuals down because it's completely blind on the way in until you really park the car at the apex and fall back down that hill. The much trickier version of this layout is through the bypass. When you come off of turn 4, you'll have tracked out to the right once again, but you need to hustle the car back to the left and turn in before the crest, where the car will go very light. Now that crest is right about here, so you're going to come over to the left side of the track, turn in before the crest. Some cars will even get up on 2 wheels as you come through this section, and then finally land as you're going right back downhill. And the main thing is to just turn in before the crest, balance the car with some power over the crest, maintenance throttle, so that the car doesn't do anything weird as it goes airborne and comes back down. And then you're essentially just trying to tuck in and keep the distance nice and tight through the last phase of turn 5 here. So you'll eventually work your way from the left side about here to the right side right about here. There's just happens to be a jump in the middle. So once we've landed through the bypass or come off the Cyclone, we'll cut our distance out of turn 5. And especially with the bypass, you're coming in here very fast. So kind of similar to turn 3, the goal is to set up all the way to the right to make sure that the next corner is as easy as possible. Once again, similar to turn 4, turn 6 is not all that complex of a corner. It's all about making sure you're set up for success early. So you can kind of let the car float just a little bit towards the middle of the track through turn 5 towards turn 6, but you want to get all the way back to the the right before you turn in and then bring it down for what will be a fairly middle of the road apex right about here. There is quite a bit of sealer through the last bit of this corner as well to help you out. So now we're working our way up onto the back quote-unquote straightaway, which as you can see is not straight, but very, very fast. It's the fastest section on the racetrack. In everything, turn 7 should be flat out. It's just a little bit of a kink, but turn 8 gets pretty severe once you get towards it. So cars with maybe 200, 250 horsepower, maybe race tires, good suspension, can actually go flat out through turn 8. But anything with pretty significant power, or if you're not on great tires, you're going to have to check up just a little bit. You want to keep your momentum up though, so you're going to have the car all the way on the right side of the track here, and make sure that you do your braking early and then balance the car at turn in to either power through or at least have maintenance throttle through turn 8 to have as much composure on the chassis as you can. If you're trying to charge into turn 8 and slow down through the corner, you're just asking to unsettle the car and have some problems there. So once you've gotten turned in, you're back to maintenance throttle if you had to lift at all. On the inside here is a bunch of concrete curbing. You're going to want to use all of that with the left side tires and then tracking out all the way across the exit curbing that's out on this side. So we have one phase of curbing on the right side here that is painted, and one side, an extra stage, I guess, that is kind of rippled curbing here. You're going to want to use all the painted curbing, but none of that rippled curbing if you can avoid it. Really what we're doing is drawing a straight line from the curb at turn 8 to the outside dirt where that curbing ends, exiting turn 8. That's the ideal, and you'll see in the video. As we're coming through turn 8, you'll notice that we start to go really significantly uphill. We're basically driving up the side of the hill all the way to turn 9. And coming into turn 9, there is a little bit of a braking zone, but right past the turn-in point, it actually starts to go uphill even more, and the crest is way over here at track out of turn 9. So we're going uphill from turn 8 to the track out of turn 9 with a pretty abrupt change in elevation right here. So there's not a lot of braking that goes into turn 9 before you get to the corner. You're going to be on the right side of the track, and there are a couple of brake markers here. So you should need a pretty good brake pressure, but you can brake late because of going uphill. But as soon as you turn in, you can prioritize a lot of entry speed, and as soon as you hit that second rise on elevation, which we'll see in the video, you can actually offset that by just tossing the car into the corner pretty hard, and it will grip up as you get to that second rise, pick up the power and offset the gravity that's going to try to slow the car down and track you all the way out to the right side of the track. If you don't pick up the power early enough, that second rise here will actually slow the car down and you'll underdrive the corner without having meant to. Now that we've thrown the car into turn 9, we've hit the second rise of elevation. The biggest mistake drivers make here is not realizing how much extra track there is to use on the exit of turn 9. Not only is there quite a bit of track here, but there's also some curbing. But if you can see, the track kind of makes you believe you're going off this direction, when in reality you're going off this direction. So you can track all the way to the right, and you shouldn't need much work to keep the car on the right side of the track, just to make sure you don't go off on the exit of turn 9. But if you're underdriving the corner and you're starting to drive off in this direction before offsetting it and coming back, you're kind of adding more drama to this section than you need to, and it will tend to lead you to underdrive it. But once we hit this crest, you've stayed on the track, just scared the dirt on the exit. Now we're going back downhill, and because this straightaway winds just a little bit, you'll actually cross to the middle of the track here at the bottom and then come back over to the right. So that's going to draw a nice straight line down this kind of kinky straightaway towards turn 10. Now coming into turn 10, we're wrapping up the lap, but these are the slowest corners on the track. At this point, everything has been very high speed, and now we're finally going to have to slow the car down quite a bit. But not until turn 11. First we get to turn 10, which has a bit of a downhill braking zone, but the trick here is, even though you can't see the entry because of the downhill braking, it actually gains camber and gains sealer, that grippy sealer we've been talking about, at the apex of turn 10. So as you come on the right side of the track, you'll do your braking, and you can really prioritize a lot of entry speed into turn 10 because you're going to gain grip both with camber and with sealer. And if you also note, this straightaway between turns 10 and 11 is very short. So you don't have to get on the power at all between these two corners. As long as you've maximized your entry speed and just kept the car barely on track through turn 10, you'll actually have done yourself quite a bit of a favor. Now that we've gotten through turn 10, turn 11 comes up really fast. You're going to have to brake pretty hard, and this is the slowest corner on the track. So yes, this straightaway looks like it might be whatever distance that is, but your braking zone's actually way back here, about halfway up the straightaway, where the curbing ends for turn 10 tends to be a pretty good reference point. So having tracked all the way out to the curb on the right, you'll get your braking done and turn in pretty late for a late apex uphill towards a late apex at turn 11. Now, turn 11 leads into this kind of winding S between turns 12 and 13, but turn 12 and 13 are essentially a part of this long straightaway. So you really don't need to set up for them much. The key is a lot of groups will put a stack of tires right here. And if you overdrive turn 11 and track out, you're tracking out right at the tires. So the sweet spot is to track out just enough to wrap inside those tires, not have to dodge them, and then have a nice acceleration zone between turns 12 and 13. Now, if you're at a standard track day where they're not having any reason to worry about track limits, they may not put those tires there, and then your job at turn 12 just got a lot easier. Now we have a nice breather before we get to the final corner, another two slowest corners on the track. You're going to work the car over to the left side for turn 14. And this is just kind of almost a decreasing radius corner on the way in. There's nothing real complex about it. You have a little bit of camber to help you into the corner, but you want to go for a pretty late apex, almost a trail break down from the left side to the right side, and you can use a lot of inside curb here. So that helps you keep the corner a little faster than you think. Just past that inside curbing, you can get on the power, and there's a lot of outside curbing here between turns 14 and 15 on the left. It's very similar to the exit at the kink at turn 8. So you want to use all the painted curb. You can use even more of the outside of that. Just use whatever amount of curb you need to exit turn 14, and that'll also artificially straighten out turn 15. So you're kind of turning this into one increasing radius corner, having decreased radius down to your late apex at turn 14. Then feeding the power hard, almost every car can go flat through turn 15 and up onto the front straightaway to complete the lap. So that's a lap of the 3-mile main circuit at Thunderhill Raceway Park. Let's jump on board and take a lap. So we're hopping on board for a lap at Thunderhill Raceway Park into a 2017 Honda Civic Si. Front-wheel drive, no extra aero, a little bit of racing suspension and brakes, and we're on some Hoosier racing tires, so good grip, but otherwise a pretty simple car. We'll go for a lap. Working our way down the front straightaway, as soon as this pit wall ends, there's the blend line that you can cross over, working our way over to the brake markers, light brake pressure down one gear and picking up the power to keep the flow going. I used a little bit of inside curb there. I wouldn't recommend it, but if it happens, it happens. Now we're going to dive straight to the inside of turn 2 and cut the distance out. You can see how easy it is to just cling to that inside. Now we're halfway around. It feels like it goes on forever, and then we can finally track out to the outside curbing. You'll see I get almost over to the left side of the track, but I turned in way before the crest for turn 3. Right here is where the sealer will pick up the grip, and we're going to cling to the right side of the track until I have to turn back for turn 4. Very straightforward, but over to the left. Now back to the center of the track, turning in before the crest. There's the two-wheeling, and the car lands, keeping the car nice and tight to the inside of turn 5 before we set up for turn 6. All the way over to the right, and just kind of flicking the car back for turn 6. There's that dark sealer that keeps the car nice and grippy, tracking out using all of the curb before we get onto the back straightaway. Here's the little kink at turn 7 before the big kink at turn 8. This car is flat out. You see, you just turn in, nice steady hands using all the paint, and there's the dirt. So we're drawing a straight line from that curb to the dirt, then a light brake or a hard brake pressure, but late up the hill. Throw the car, not even a downshift, up over the crest, and keeping the car glued to the right side of the track, making sure that we can use all the speed possible there in turn 9. Now downhill, this is where the car gains camber and grip. At the apex, you see how much speed we're able to carry in, but as soon as we get the wheel straight, we're back on the brakes, slowing the car down one more time, and wrapping for a late apex at turn 11. There are the tires that we have to dodge through turn 12 and into turn 13, which are all in acceleration zone down this straightaway towards turn 14. So you want to be on the left side of the track before you cross under this bridge. Just past will be the braking zone, depending on the car you're in, and we're going to slowly bring the car down for a late apex using all that inside curb, back on the power, using the outside curb, there it is, and flat out through turn 15, back onto the front straightaway. So those are my tips for the main circuit here at Thunderhill Raceway Park, which brings us to our scores, and this one's got some high scores. So first up, we have our fun factor. I'm going to give it a 9. I think this track is absolutely a blast. The only thing missing really is a little bit of that danger, I would say, that adds to the fun because this track is in a basic, field and rolling hills. So the sensation of speed isn't maybe there as much as it could be at other tracks with some tighter obstacles. But in general, this track is just an absolute blast and a joy to drive. So that leads me into our risk factor, and I'm going to give it a 3. As I just mentioned, it really is not a risky track. If you do go off because this track is relatively fast, you might go for a long ways, but there's very little to hit. There's very little opportunity to make a big enough mistake that you're going to have some consequences. So you can go to this track trusting that you can push your car to the limit and pretty much get away with anything. And finally, our technicality. I'm going to give it a 6 on technicality because I think this track does lead you to driving it the way it's meant to be driven, kind of naturally. And the elevation always leads you to where the car wants to be. The sight lines are pretty good. You kind of have to have some muscle memory with some of those blind corners, but in general, I don't find this place to be a particularly challenging place to learn or execute. It's just a ton of fun. So overall, I'm going to give Thunderhill a 9. This is absolutely one of my favorite tracks. It works its way in and out of my top 5, and I think it's one of the hidden gems in the United States. So if you're lucky enough to get to Northern California, where there's not much else than a great racetrack, then you should definitely enjoy it. So that does it for Thunderhill. We do offer coaching packages here at ASM, so if you're headed to Thunderhill or any other track, we do everything from remote coaching to private coaching at the track and a whole lot more. But I hope you found that helpful, and thanks for watching.